I stumbled upon this greatly flawed anti-net neutrality video recently, and as a certified network engineer and web developer with experience in the realm of net neutrality, I could not resist providing a rebuttal.
Really? I wasn't aware that was something someone could specialize in. Are you smelling a big steaming pile of crap already? Yeah, this ought to be good.
Ben Shapiro establishes himself as opposition against the concept of net neutrality, and he provides a series of arguments comprised of misused terminology and an overall lack of understanding about the internet and how it works.
Just to remind everyone, net neutrality was the regulation in late 2015 of internet service providers under Title II of the Telecommunications Act of 1934. The same title of the same act that gave AT&T a monopoly in phone service for so long.
I felt obligated to respond to Ben's argument, seeing as how the internet is on the verge of destruction due to this exact type of misinformation.
Oh no! The internet is gonna be destroyed because it'll work exactly the same way it did for decades. Gee, hyperbole much?
Basically, net neutrality is the suggestion. It was only put into place in the last couple of years of the Obama administration. And before that, the internet was working just fine.
False. Net neutrality was introduced in 1996 under the Telecommunications Act.
Not in any way true. The term wasn't even coined until 2003. There was nothing in the 96 Telecom Act that has anything to do with that concept. In fact, it specifically said that broadband internet providers were not telecommunications carriers, which is probably a good thing because the industries that were covered saw less competition and more monopolization as a result. Most of this act that related to the internet was Title V, the hideous Communications Decency Act, most of which was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. The only part remaining is the part that says that ISPs, websites, and other providers cannot be held responsible for the behavior of their users, something that's been severely eroded in the last few years. And the only thing that happened last December was just rolling back the regulations that the Obama administration introduced. It's going back to 2015, not to 1996.
The reason why it was reclassified is due to the ongoing problem of internet service providing monopolies.
Those monopolies were provided by state and local governments. How come none of you yahoos ever complain about them? And if the problem is monopolies, why regulate it under a title that created one of the biggest monopolies that ever existed in this country?
Blackmailing and throttling smaller companies.
That never happened. Stop lying.
Verizon, Bell, Rogers, or Comcast cannot ban internet access to Hulu or Netflix.
They never tried to.
Net neutrality also says that all pages have to be loaded at the same speed.
In no way does net neutrality demand that all websites load at the same speed.
Oh, really? What does it demand? This ought to be good.
The speed at which a page loads is dependent upon the speed of the internet connection you're paying for, minus the amount of data which the page is comprised of. If you are paying for an internet connection speed of 5 megabits per second, and you load a web page that is comprised of 10 megabits of data, then the page should load in a theoretical time span of 2 seconds.
Did you see what this guy did? Shapiro said they have to load them at the same speed. This guy, in a desperate attempt to debunk him, deliberately conflated speed with time. Yes, a smaller web page will load in a smaller amount of time, but it's at the same speed. Just like a truck going the same speed will reach a destination 5 miles away sooner than it will one that's 50 miles away. This Scott Hunt guy is being incredibly dishonest.
Net neutrality demands that access to all websites on the internet shall be permitted by internet service providers at the very internet speed you're paying for.
So it does say you should load it at that speed, the very speed you're paying for! You just said it!
A 10 megabyte Facebook page should load at half the speed of your 5 megabyte Twitter page regardless of your internet connection speed.
Again, conflating speed with time. Scott, you are a liar!
The reality is that if you're taking up a huge share of the bandwidth, then there might be companies that say, we will provide you a faster access, but you have to pay more money.
This makes absolutely no fucking sense.
Really? Why not? You pay a small amount for a small speed, and you pay more if you want a faster speed. This is how it's always worked. Are you sure you're a network engineer?
Netflix is a centralized streaming network. They manage their own uplink bandwidth while their subscribers access their service using their internet connections provided by an internet service provider.
Let me explain to you how this really works, because this bozo, this oh-so-wonderful expert engineer on the subject, either never set foot in a networking class or he's lying to you about how it works. I have network engineering certifications from Microsoft, Novell, and Zaire, so sit down and I'll explain it. The websites you visit pay an ISP for a connection to the internet. So do you. But unless you both happen to be on the same ISP, Verizon or whatever, the traffic will have to go over an internet backbone provider, also known as a Tier 1 network, something like Cogent or CenturyLink, which used to be known as Level 3. Those ISPs have to pay the Tier 1 provider based on the amount of bandwidth they consume. So when you load a web page, the website's ISP has to pay for that amount of bandwidth going over the backbone, and your ISP does as well. Funny how none of these discussions about net neutrality cover this aspect of how the internet works. Maybe that's because it's too inconvenient. If this guy knew the first thing about what he's talking about, he'd know that all of this fear-mongering came from ISPs trying to do traffic management when streaming video became popular. Netflix represents 30% of internet traffic, and I mean just Netflix, not counting Hulu and YouTube and all the rest. If this guy really is a networking engineer, which I am very much doubting right now, he'd know about the importance of traffic management. The fact is, they're not going to be able to offer every website at the same speed. And they shouldn't. Otherwise, Netflix traffic would clog up internet access points and make it difficult for people sending email or whatever. The very existence of Netflix would mean that everyone else got a 30% reduction in speed. Is that really what you want? Most of the controversies that led to the calls for net neutrality were the result of ISPs and Tier 1 providers trying to figure out how to manage this, and they came up with solutions before Obama's net neutrality regulations passed.
You can think of it in two ways. It's a public utility. Everybody should be able to turn on the tap at the same time and get the water, or that the pipe company should be able to charge you what they want, or charge the water company what it wants for the water moving through the pipes.
Oh, for fuck's sake. The fact that the cost of your water bill is determined by the amount of water you use is the exact fucking purpose of net neutrality on the internet.
No, it is not! You just said that you're against charging people more to download more, and so has every other net neutrality advocate ever, and you go away from this extremely prominent claim as soon as it's inconvenient.
So what would a world without water neutrality look like?
Want to take a shower and wash your face? Well, you'll need to subscribe to our shit shower and shave package for $39.99 per month. Oh, you have a pool? Well, it'll cost you an extra $59.99 per month for our quiet leisure and H2O entertainment package.
Oh, give me a break! No ISP ever even tried to conduct business that way. Again, this is how it was for the first 24 years of the World Wide Web, and none of that happened. This is blatant fear-mongering.
Well, the problem with that, of course, is that it benefits big corporations like Netflix over the little guy.
The exact fucking opposite is true. Giving Verizon, Rogers, Bell, or Comcast the ability to block access to any internet source they choose could not be any worse for the little guy.
Again, they were never even trying to do any of this. Oh, but who is trying to block a lot of websites? Who's been trying to block the Pirate Bay for years? Who took down Backpage and Silk Road? It's your holy government! The government you want to give power to regulate the internet! And what he's fear-mongering about has been happening in a different way. With copyrights and DRM, people are completely restricted from viewing certain content based on nothing more than where they're located at the time. And because of pressure from their big corporate buddies, government has made it so you can't even access Netflix or Hulu from a VPN, even if you're still in the country and just want to keep your transmission secure. And you want to talk about smaller ISPs? Consider this. Smaller ISPs have trouble affording the bandwidth of their users using Netflix. Several of them have contacted Netflix wanting to set up staging servers so their users can have faster access at lower costs. Despite both them and Netflix wanting this to happen, there's no way. DRM and laws that enforce it like the DMCA make it impossible. And yet, none of you net neutrality nimrods ever say one word about this. You fearmonger over and over again about ISPs doing something that's absolutely impossible for them to do, but ignore it when your holy and blessed state does it over and over and over again. It's disgusting!
Let's say you're a small online news outlet. Since you are a small news outlet, you're not included in Verizon and Comcast's new bullshit news and blog packages.
How would this even work? He doesn't say. He just asserts that it would, with no support. When several of the world's biggest governments working together can't even take down the Pirate Bay!
It's not incumbent on internet service providers to be forced to be treated like public utilities.
No, Ben. ISPs provide access to a public utility.
No, they do not! You're trying to treat it like a public utility so that your holy government can get control over it. But you know what every single public utility is? A monopoly. That's the whole justification for government granting monopoly power to things like electricity and cable companies. And again, you aren't going after that at all. Gee, I wonder fucking why!
Like for people, for example, who only use email but don't watch streaming video, right? Like older people who only want to watch TV but don't actually want to use Netflix or Hulu, they should be able to get the internet cheaper than people who want to be able to get Netflix and Hulu.
This already exists, Ben.
Yes, it exists because net neutrality ended, but the net neutrality regulations absolutely forbade charging customers more money for more bandwidth. Now that they're gone, we consumers are seeing more options again. Charter just upgraded me to 100 megabits, no extra charge, and added a 300 megabit option where I live. None of that happened during net neutrality. In fact, as opponents predicted, ISP investment in new infrastructure was stifled, only to resume once the regulations were repealed. Net neutrality was also being used against services like T-Mobile, who were trying to exempt streaming video from tons of companies from bandwidth caps. Exactly what you say should happen, people having equal access to streaming video, is something net neutrality tried to prevent. And besides, when Shapiro made that point earlier, you said, and I quote, "This makes no fucking sense." So which is it? Does it already exist, or does it make no sense? Make up your mind!
I hope Shapiro will be honest enough to say I was wrong when ISPs with left-wing biases decide to start shutting down right-wing news outlets.
Hey, they were doing that under net neutrality, moron! Remember controversies like the adpocalypse? Here's the real question. Will you be honest enough to say you were wrong when this doesn't happen? Because it's been months and it hasn't happened yet. In fact, things are getting quite a bit better than they were for independent content providers. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, why not hit like and subscribe? And to make sure I can produce more, support this channel on Patreon and Maker Support. And check out all the other great content here, like this video selected especially for you.